And it's a good morning to the Gelding and Gelding Cox Plate Day at Moonee Valley, and an almost perfect day for the big race, and group racing returns to the Valley with not one, not two, not three, but 6 group races, including 2 Group 2s, the Cox Plate and the Manikato. Are you excited, Gelding?
Oh, Professor, good morning, listeners. The race that stops, maybe not stops the nation, but Moonee Valley selling is the best 2 minutes in sport. I'm not too sure about that, but look, the Cox Plate's a legendary race, Professor, worth $5 million. The Group 1 Australasian Weight for Age Championship. Hard not to get excited, Professor, and good to see that they've put their Group 1 sprint race also on this program, Professor, in the Manikato. In previous years, they spread it to their Friday night meeting. Maybe if they got this one right, Professor, they put their Gold Cup on last night for their Friday night. Maybe that should be on this program as well and make the one day just super special.
Well, yes, Gelding, unfortunately, racing clubs and other sporting clubs at times attempt to split the assets that they've got, but in my opinion, that just dilutes the program. And we discussed it in the warm-up this morning before we went to air, Gelding, that there are a number of races at Moonee Valley today where there are 7 or fewer runners, which can't be good for punters.
Well, Professor, Racing Victoria and racing clubs decided to add 10 races to their programs now on Saturday. As you've said, you look at the field. Great if you're an owner. Fantastic if you're an owner. But as you said, if you're looking at a punting point of view, how does this increase turnover, Professor? Sure, they've got a couple of extra races, but if it was, say, 10 horses in each field and competitive racing, surely that would be better for turnover and the experience. But as we well know, committees get their little piece of paper at the end of the day, and they have a look at turnover, and that's how they get their revenue. But don't get me started on committees and Racing Victoria, Professor, because we'll do that. And just having a look at today's field and the scratchings, are Racing Victoria and the clubs losing the battle to Peter V'landys? Here, the Moonee Valley Race Club will put on a $5 million Cox Plate and a $2 million sprint race. And all they can get for the sprint race is 7 horses, Professor.
Yeah, it's disappointing, Gelding, very disappointing. Anyway, 10 race card, the first at 12:10 and the last, lucky there's daylight saving, Gelding, otherwise we'd be putting the lights on, 5:50 p.m. As I said 2 weeks ago, Sportsfan Stan wouldn't be there for the 5:50.
No, the 5:50 leading into the 6 o'clock news, Professor, for Channel 7. And the Cox Plate at the time on at time of 5:10, Professor. Didn't the last race used to be 4:45 or something?
Yeah, Gelding, and didn't these feature races run somewhere between 2:30 and 3:30 in the afternoon?
Oh, I thought they would normally race 6 or race 7, Professor. And
exactly, Gelding.
Normally the first or second leg of the quadrella.
All right, well, the track's a good 4, Gelding. There's some discussion about where the rail will be. The Racing Victoria racing.com site says it's in the true position, but there was some discussion about whether it might be 3 metres out after last night's racing. So all we would suggest is that the punters check before they put their bets on to ensure that they know where the rail will be, because that will affect the pattern of racing, Gelding. There's no doubt about that, that's for sure.
Oh, definitely right, Professor. Maybe I had the 3 metre rule, the 3 metre out. Maybe I got it wrong. I'm happy to go with what's in the paper. The true position after being through last night. Watching the races last night, Professor, seemed to suit on-pace runners. So the Valley, I'm a bit worried that the track's going to be very hard and be a bit leaderish today. But as we always say, Professor, watch the first couple of races and see how they go, because some of our picks do tend to get back in the field, Professor.
All right, Gelding. So without further ado, what are your two best bets for Cox Plate Day at the Valley?
Well, Professor, the best bet I'm leaving alone, because it's way too short, even for me. I know that'll surprise the colt, but anyway, we'll talk about the best bet later on.
Gelding, just before you go on, I've got to insert this here because it's quite relevant. One of our regular viewers, Schooner from Terralgan, he now texts me on Saturday morning trying to guess what your bets will be.
Right.
And he usually sends me the two shortest priced runners for the day.
Well, Professor, as I've explained the strategy to you and Schooner before, horses are normally favoured for a reason. Normally, they're the best performed horse from leading stables, and normally have the best jockeys aboard. And the art to it, Professor, favourites do win a third of the races. So if you're in a 10-race program, the favourites are going to win 3 or 4 of the races. That is that is the probability of the maths in the thing. So the art is picking what are the true favourites and picking the right ones, Professor. And as you can see with the Professor's Parlay, it's very hard to, it's a horse race, so a lot can go on. So what we're trying to do is pick horses that will win, Professor, because we'd rather have the listeners have a collect than sometimes in Schooner's experience. I think he's been left with a piece of paper, hasn't he?
That could have happened rather regularly, Gelding.
Maybe I can suggest to Schooner that he uses his old TOB tickets and put them up as wallpaper, just to remind him that they're losing bets.
Well, all right, Gelding, yes, a point very well made. So without further ado, now that I've interrupted you, you've got the floor for your two best bets.
Well, I'm leaving what I think is the main bet alone, but we'll talk about that. I'm leaving the Cox Plate to you, Professor, because as the listeners and you are aware, I've been on the Romantic Warrior bandwagon for a month and I've been on the horse for a while, but I want you to put a perspective on it rather than my just one blinkered view of Romantic Warrior. So, look, I'm looking for some parlay tips for us to get our parlays up. I like race 5 in the Crystal Mile, 1,600. I like Antino, Professor, number 4. I thought this horse was going to win the Toorak at Caulfield on Caulfield Guineas Day and just got photo finished out. Should have won at Flemington. It's won at Sandown. Blake Shin aboard. As we've been speaking, Professor, over the last couple of weeks, Blake Shin and Damien Lane have just been in fantastic form. So happy Blake Shin's aboard. So disappointed there's only 6 horses in the field, Professor. I think the danger to Antino will be the top plate, Tuvalu, but happy to go with Blake Shin on race 5, horse 4. Tony Collin has brought this horse down, trying to win a Group 1. So surely this will be setting it up for something during the Melbourne Cup Carnival. Professor, that I then go into the Vase, race 7, over the Cox Plate distance of 2,040 metres. Horse that ran 6th in the Caulfield Guineas, Professor. Dad, this horse finished basically around Militarise and King Colorado, which ran 4th and 5th in the Caulfield Guineas. Their trainers, Waller and Eustace, have put their horses into the Cox Plate, Professor. So here's a horse that finished with these horses. It's running in a lesser race, a Group 2 for 3-year-olds over the same distance. Suffered a bit of interference towards the end of the Caulfield Guineas. So I'm going race 7, horse 3, Veradad, Professor. I think that Caulfield Guineas form will be good, even though leader biased on the day. But if the 4th and 5th horses and leading trainers consider they're up to Cox Plate standard, well, the horse that finished with them, I think, should have no trouble winning a Group 2 race. So my 2, Professor, race 5, horse 4, into race 7, horse 3, and certainly we'll be parlaying those horses into a couple of others, Professor.
Fair enough, Gelding.
And you like?
Yes, Gelding. I'm going early and then late. So I like race 1. Let's get the starting race on the card at 12:10. It's an open race over 1,000 metres, Gelding. In this race, I like horse number 2, Unflinching, coming out of barrier 2. It's had 12 starts for 6 wins and 3 placings. So a pretty good form guide there, Gelding. 50% win rate, 75% place rate. It's had a history of winning at the Valley. So I'm going for Valley form in this race, Gelding.
Track specialist, Professor.
In its last campaign, Gelding, it had 4 starts at the Valley for 3 wins and a second. So you really can't go past that for good form. Second up form's good also, Gelding. It's had 3 starts for a win, a second, and not a placing. At last start, it led and weakened, but I think it's been trained up for this race, Gelding. So it's showing good odds at the moment, fixed $3.70 and $1.85. So good value there for each way punters in a race where I think this horse, if it doesn't win, will at least run second.
Let's hope so, Professor. Trained by the Freedmans and, of course, Jamie Carr. And as you said, what a fantastic Moonee Valley record. Just having a quick look in the paper, 7 starts for 5 wins and a second, Professor. So, if you've got a Valley horse, let's go.
Yeah, well, a happy hunting ground, Gelding. But I tell you what hasn't been a happy hunting ground at the moment for Jamie Carr, and that's race courses. Her over her last 50 rides, she's got a 6% win rate, which is, you and I would agree, for what we would believe one of the better jockeys going around. Is has she lost the good rides, do you think, Gelding, because she was out for so long?
Yeah, Professor. Look, there's been a couple of suspensions, maybe a few life issues hanging over the shoulder, hanging above her head type of thing. And look, she's come back, still getting very good rides, Professor. So, but, the horse is just, I don't know, she had something special.
Yeah.
And we were on board it. And when she rode 100 winners in a season,
well, she took GM Racing with her that season, Gelding, because we were very rarely not picking a horse that she was riding.
Well, she was just riding so well. She's got beautiful soft hands, and horses seem to go for her, Professor. Look, the ups and downs of racing, as I said, at the moment, I'm probably on the Blake Shin, Damian Lane type of bandwagon compared to, say, Jamie Carr. But look, she'll come back. She's too good a jockey not to come back. So let's hope, she's there. Like, I was just having a quick look into the Cox Plate, Professor, and I would say that, this time 2 years ago, you would have thought Jamie Carr's riding in the Cox Plate, and this year she's not.
Yeah, exactly, Gelding. All right, well, that's a great segue, Gelding, because my next selection is in race 9, the Cox Plate, a Group 1 for 3-year-old plus, over 2,040 metres. And in this one, Gelding, I like race horse number 8, Fangirl, coming out of barrier 9, had 21 starts for 7 wins and 7 placings. So it's a 33% win rate, a 67% place rate. Last start win at Randwick 2 weeks ago, Gelding, when it beat Mr. Brightside by nearly 3 lengths in the King Charles III Stakes. Waller, I think, set this horse for this race. Good each way odds, Gelding. You can get 650 and 230 fixed at the moment, and that's from a horse that beat one of its major rivals by nearly 3 lengths 2 weeks ago.
Professor, like it. This is a horse that likes good going, hard ground. As I said, Mr. Brightside had the perfect form going up for the King Charles up in Sydney, and Fangirl just destroyed him. Interesting, James McDonald normally rides this horse.
Yes, hopped off.
He's hopped off and stayed with the Hong Kong horse, Romantic Warrior, who I'll be on. But Chris Waller's pulled a very, very smart move, Professor.
Yes, he's dipped into the Hong Kong jockey barrel.
He's brought along Hong Kong's leading jockey, Zach Burton, to ride Fangirl. Now, is this going to be there that Zach's going to be fully aware of how good Romantic Warrior is and what it can do? So is this to counteract any moves from that? But Zach Burton, a world-class jockey. So, look, I don't think you lose anything by... And James McDonald's a world-class jockey as well.
Yes, darling.
If you're on Fangirl, I don't think you lose anything by McDonald hopping off and Burton coming on, Professor.
No, I totally agree with you, Gelding. And I think it's a very good move from Waller. That's why he's one of the best trainers going around, Gelding. He's sized it up and thought, well, how can I get some advantage back by losing McDonald? He's gone for Burton. And I did say to you after Fangirl's run 2 weeks ago, Gelding, that was definitely a black book run where
magnificent run.
If this horse runs like that today, it's all over.
Thanks, Professor.
Well, Gelding, I have been guilty of theories before, and we know how those theories go, don't we?
Oh well, the theories you're going to use later in the program certainly have me worried, Professor.
All right, Gelding. So my horse's tip for today are race 1, horse 2, Unflinching, and race 9, horse 8, Fangirl. And let's now turn to the Professor's Parlay, which has taken a Gelding. I sat down and worked out what money I had to pay GM Racing during the week. I do that every now and then because I just stash it all away and then look at how we've been gone. I did the form guide for the parlay, and we've dropped off a little bit, Gelding. We're down to 40% over the last 10 weeks, which is a bit disappointing as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Professor, it was going at an absolutely phenomenal rate of 75-80%.
Yes.
If you have a look at any tipping services, Professor, that are out in this marketplace, any that are averaging 40%, they'd be putting that up in headlines, Professor. And here you are saying how disappointing it is we're at 40%. So, don't be too hard on yourself, Professor. I think you should be, it's doing fantastic, the parlay, and we'll continue. But let's try and get it back up to the heights of where it was. Exactly. And by doing that, maybe we can help Schooner and the Colt. We're looking at horses.
Oh, and David from Mordialloc.
Oh, David from Mordialloc. The man that follows the horses and writes to us, oh, well done, we've had a fill up, but we don't see too much of it.
And Jack from Richmond as well.
Oh, Jack from Richmond, okay.
Jack from Richmond, who sent me a text saying, have you got any tips for last week? I haven't heard from him since.
Yes. Anyway, oh
well. Gelding, I'm a bit peeved with myself. The Wednesday place parlay got up. Remember, we didn't know because the results weren't out when we had our last That's Racing. Gregor Limo ran third, and the Chiefs beat the Chargers and the Seahawks beat the Cardinals. Now, tell me this, Gelding. Why didn't I go for that same split on last Saturday's parlay? Why did I try and change it up a little bit? I don't know. It was very poor tipping, Gelding. I should have stuck with what I'd already selected and I was satisfied with. It just crept under my guard a little bit. The Chiefs beat the Chargers, but the Patriots beat the Bills. And as I said to you on that text, Gelding, the Bills, they're out. We're not tipping them again. They're gone.
They're gone.
Just like Chelsea, not tipping them again in the EPL.
Well, I thought the EPL was out, Professor, but
Well, it might be making a.
well, we'll see what happens. But look, Professor, as you said, it was a new bet. You wanted to try something a little bit different. You wouldn't be cursing yourself if the Bills had got up.
No, I wouldn't have. But the place parlay was so good, Gelding, with Gregor Lumo, that it paid $14.
Yes.
So I would have been very happy to get $14 times 2.
Yes.
Rather than $14 in a piece of paper that I can stick on the wall.
Some wallpaper, Professor.
Exactly right, Gelding. Exactly
maybe,
right. Anyway,
maybe you should have that as a backdrop.
Yeah. Ouch! Ouch!
No. We'll go around the schooners and we'll take a photo of all these old losing tickets and we can put them up. Hey.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a better idea.
I wonder whether the schooner still owes me a beer from the Richmond Sydney game.
Probably.
Yeah.
Been paid off yet?
I don't know, Professor. I might have that one kind of up my sleeve, I think.
All right, Gelding. Well, let's look at today's parlay and see if we can get back on the winners list. The agreed bet of the day, and I agree with you, Gelding, race 8, horse 6, Imperatriz, and perhaps for the viewers, we haven't spoken about that horse today, but perhaps you'd like to give the viewers our idea of why we think that's the bet of the day at Moonee Valley today.
Professor, one of the best sprinters going around in Australasia, Imperatives. The Taco Racing Syndicate. This horse was invited to go to the Everest. They decided not to. They wanted to concentrate on the sprints at Moonee Valley, Professor. Imperatives has won the last 2 sprints there at the Valley. In
Valley form, Gelding. Again, Valley form raises its head.
In record time as well, Professor. So really, what more do you want for a horse? Are you just having a look at the form guide, Professor? 21 starts for 15 wins.
I'll take that any day, Gelding.
Last start, won the 1100 Moonee Valley Group 1. Before that, won the 1,000-metre Moya Stakes Group 1 at Moonee Valley. Before that, won a 1,200 weight for age, Moonee Valley, beating Bella Nevertina, Rocking Horse and September Run last year. Then it ran second up at Randwick, beaten by 0.8 of a length to Arterius. Was a bit unlucky to be caught that day. 2 starts before that, 1-1, both in New Zealand, Professor. Fantastic horse, though. Any horse that can win 2 Group 1s at Moonee Valley,
yep,
in course record time, I think we'll be happy with that, Professor. And Opie Blossom coming over from New Zealand to ride the horse, so giving up all these rides there. Basically for this horse.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me, Gelding. And let's parlay that into, we'll go first of all for the NFL and the Kansas City Chiefs, who haven't let us down all season, Gelding. We've been on them. They're on top of the AFC. They've won 6 out of 7. They're only allowing 15 points per game, and they average scoring 25 against the bottom of the table, Denver Broncos. The Giraffe won't be happy about that. They're his team. They've only won 2 out of 7, Gelding. They average score of 21, but here's why they'll lose to Kansas City Chiefs, Gelding. They allow an average of 31 points per game against. That's the worst in the NFL, and it's the worst in the NFL by about 26 points, Gelding. So they've got a very poor defense, and so I think the Kansas City Chiefs will get over the Broncos. And let's parlay that into the EPL, Gelding.
Oh, Professor. Now, we're going to go through the old podcasts, because didn't you declare you weren't going to the EPL again?
Yes, but I've decided to dip into that barrel again, Gelding.
Now, didn't you just say to the listeners you're upset with yourself because you went against some rules that you'd set previously?
Yeah, but I'm upset for myself because last Saturday's parlay, Gelding, I was going to tip Spurs to beat, and I can't remember who they were playing, and I didn't. And I instead went for the Bills to beat the Patriots, and the Spurs won, and the Bills didn't. So I was kicking myself. So I thought, well, no, if I see a bet which I think is good, I think that's the one to go in. And why? I'll give you the reason behind it, Gelding. Arsenal are third on the table. They're unbeaten. They've got a plus 10 goal difference. They're playing the bottom of the table, Sheffield United, winless in 10 starts, minus 17 goal difference, the worst in the Premier League. Now, Gelding, the bookies have got Sheffield United winning 20-1. And guess what? They've got a draw at, Gelding, 10-1. So if the bookies are offering 10-1 for a draw and 20-1 for a win, I'm thinking that Arsenal have got a pretty good chance in this game. Only a theory, Gelding. Only a theory.
Professor, your theories are normally quite well thought out. All I was saying,
normally, Gelding, I think there's a but coming here.
I will say on this, I did like your statement when you said you were staying away from the EPL. I'm glad that the pick is not Chelsea. So I'll go with you this time, Professor.
Just this once.
We'll go this time, but will you give me some hope that if something happens in the EPL and this bet, there'll be the red pen through the line of the EPL?
Until I see another good bet.
Oh, dear, Professor.
Oh, okay. Gelding. Plenty of humour in today's show. All right, Gelding. Well, we wish punters all the best for today. And Gelding, next Saturday's show will be That's Racing's 150th. So that's a bit of a milestone.
The banner, is it coming out, or were you saving that for 200?
Might say that for 200, Gelding. But I did, when I was totting up what the wins were over the last few months, I thought, I'll go back to when we started and just see how many shows we've done. And so today's was number 149 and next Saturday's number 150. So that's a bit of a milestone, I think.
A very nice little milestone, Professor. And of course, we've used the tips to invest in the racing industry.
Yes, we have.
Yeah. And
we're putting our money where our mouths are. Yeah.
So, that's given us an interest. So we hope we've given some of the listeners some good fun and a bit of we've given a couple a bit of money, Professor, and I just worry about the short fingers of a lot of them.
Maybe we can take that up with David from Mordialloc very soon.
Oh, there's also one from Hampton, isn't there?
Yes, there is, Gelding. Have you heard from him since?
No, not since we've told him that. Yeah,
that's Darren from Hampton. In case he's
Darren from Hampton. Yes, we told him to back the last winner at Rose Hill one day, and we saw him for lunch, and we didn't see him after.
All right, Gelding. Well, I'm trying to organise another lunch with David from Mordialloc and Darren from Hampton. I'll certainly let you know once we've organised a date. And until our 150th show next Saturday, it's good luck
and good punting.